In tonight's City Under Siege, MD Anderson Cancer Center is at the forefront of cancer research, but even hospital insiders were surprised to learn exactly where some of their research money comes from. Ned Hibbard investigates in this exclusive report.
You think graphic art.
Children and Christmas cards. That's what comes to mind when people think of the MD Anderson Cancer Center. Every year, the hospital raises almost $1 million for kids with cancer, selling cards designed by the youngsters themselves.
I think MD Anderson is perhaps the very leader in the world on finding out about cancer and what causes it and how we can begin to cure it.
And when it comes to cancer treatment, U.S. News and World Report rates MD Anderson as the second best hospital in the United States. It wouldn't be such a busy place if it weren't for the many diseases caused by smoking. Even people who are already sick puff away in a shaded area a few yards from the hospital doors. But about 1 out of every 4 patients who come here hoping for a cure will instead die because of illnesses linked to tobacco. There was a time when that connection wasn't well understood. When advertisements on the back of Life magazine proclaimed more doctors smoke Camels than any other cigarette. In those days, tobacco companies could downplay the health risks of smoking by associating their names with the medical establishment. But those days are gone, aren't they? Not at MD Anderson.
They're taking money from an industry that kills 418,000 people in the United States and an estimated 3 million people a year in the world.
That industry is the tobacco industry. It's a profitable business, one that reaps billions upon billions of dollars every year. And in 1994, the tobacco companies handed out just under 20 million of those dollars through an organization called the Council for Tobacco Research, or CTR. The CTR's latest report lists 13 MD Anderson scientists who sought out and received grant money from the tobacco companies. According to the report, 4 of those studies are still in progress.
Most of them are basic biochemistry, basic molecular biology, basic genetics type of things that have very little or nothing whatsoever to do with tobacco.
Like this project, which examines the role of urokinase and its receptor gene in invasive colon cancer. The research is bona fide, but it probably won't shed any light on the connection between tobacco and cancer. And that, say critics, is exactly why the tobacco companies are paying for it.
The question you have to ask again is whether the research you're doing is as important, or more so, than the benefit the tobacco industry is getting from using you and your institution's name when they go in front of the courts, or when they go in front of the press, or when they go in front of Congress.
And lately, they've been going in front of all 3 with regularity. Last year, top tobacco company executives testified before a congressional subcommittee, and much of what they said under oath runs counter to the overwhelming scientific evidence.
Cigarette smoking is not addictive. Cigarettes contain nicotine because it occurs naturally in tobacco. Nicotine contributes to the taste of cigarettes and the pleasures of smoking. The presence of nicotine, however, does not make cigarettes a drug.
For years, anti-tobacco activists have been saying testimony like that is nothing more than a smokescreen. And now that testimony is also the focus of 2 Justice Department probes revealed yesterday into whether tobacco executives lied to Congress. And there's more fuel for the fire. Last week, the Journal of the American Medical Association, known as JAMA, published its most comprehensive attack on the tobacco industry to date. The authors examined reams of internal documents belonging to the Brown and Williamson Tobacco Corporation. Their findings: cigarette makers knew 30 years ago that nicotine is addictive and that tobacco smoke could cause cancer. JAMA concludes that there has been a conspiracy within the tobacco industry to keep this information from reaching the American public. And the editors make this recommendation, quoting now, medical researchers should refuse any funding from the tobacco industry and its subsidiaries to avoid giving them an appearance of credibility.
For a medical researcher in 1995 to take money from a tobacco company is like a detective taking money from the mob.
But MD Anderson isn't the only local institution that's receiving funding from the Council for Tobacco Research. Several other branches of the University of Texas system are also sponsoring projects that are paid for by the tobacco companies. So is Baylor College of Medicine. And it doesn't stop there.
A survey done by the American Medical Association 2 years ago showed that over half the medical schools in this country still either accept or would accept funding from the tobacco companies.
At Baylor, the issue is one of academic freedom. It's their policy not to limit the sources of funding available to researchers as long as the money comes with no strings attached. Critics say no strings are needed because the only Baylor project being underwritten by the Council for Tobacco Research has almost nothing to do with tobacco. As for the CTR itself, it purports to be an objective scientific body. But MD Anderson's Dr. Joel Dunnington says the CTR is actually little more than a shill.
This money is only used as a PR instrument by the tobacco industry.
In view of that, why is MD Anderson, Baylor, UT, why are they still taking this money?
You'll have to ask the people above me.
We tried to, but after a week of requesting a response from an MD Anderson administrator or one of the doctors whose research is funded by the tobacco companies, we were told that no one was available to give us the hospital's side of the story. And Dunnington says there is a reason why the state-controlled institution is silent on this issue.
I believe that if our institution came out very, very strong against tobacco corporations, we could have problems in the legislative budget process.
Why? Because, Dunnington says, the tobacco lobby has deep roots in Austin, and Austin holds the purse strings for UT. There's nothing illegal about accepting grants from the Council for Tobacco Research, but critics argue that there is something hypocritical about doing so. MD Anderson received a total of $80 million last year for research. Of that, a hospital spokesperson says, about $200,000 came from tobacco interests. A small percentage, to be sure. But for Dr. Alan Blum and a growing chorus of others, it's a matter of principle.
If we have people beating around the bush, much less taking money from the tobacco companies for more research, then we're in deep trouble.
Maybe someday, Blum hopes, MD Anderson Cancer Center will truly be, as the sign proclaims, smoke-free. For City Under Siege, I'm Ned Hibbard.